province's new online safety dashboard will play a crucial role in developing violence prevention strategies in the province. The dashboard was launched today. It will be used by the various departments in the provincial government to track safety and trauma-related incidents across the province. Our reporter Mariska Buerta has more for us.
We're coming to you from one of the nerve centres of the Western Cape government, where today the Premier and other MECs in his government announced the safety dashboard. Now, you would remember from COVID-19, the Western Cape had a very detailed dashboard speaking to COVID cases, infections, vaccinations, and they've now used this same technology to roll over into the aspects of safety within the province and tackling the issue of violent crime in the province. To talk to us a little bit more, we have the Premier Alan Winde. Premier, thank you very, very much for joining us. We see behind you there's some boards there, and this is the nerve centre where information is related from or collated. Explain to us where we are and what happens here.
So, of course, I think everybody knows if you don't have data, you can't manage. And you need to be able to distill data down to evidence that says, let's go and try something because of what the evidence is telling us. And are we moving the needle? Are we changing things? Now, we learned that during COVID-19. We could depict a street that was the super spreader area, or a nightclub, as we did. Or, we could, through that data, we could work out who, at what percentage, in what age group you were vaccinated in by geographic area. And I kept on saying to myself, normally when we think of policing and crime statistics, it's a history lesson. It comes months after the fact. If we are to be serious about bringing down crime rates, we need to be able to have that data, turn it into evidence that says, using this evidence, these are the changes we're going to make. This is how we're going to do deployment. But I think more importantly now is how we're moving from not only the deployment on the one side, but violence prevention, because deployment and policing is you policing a consequence, you're policing a problem, but we need to get ahead of it. And the violence prevention, which is the next stage that we're moving to, led by the Department of Health, which leads our data, both in COVID-19 but now in our safety dashboard, because it's the hospitals that deal with the trauma. The hospital deals with the gunshot wound or the knife wound or the GBV violence, whatever that is, the hospitals deal with it, or even the morgue data. How do we bring that in? How do we overlay it with different layers, and then we make decisions? So we first of all deploy, but then we go in and say, what about after schools programs here? Let's try and change a deployment time, because we know on that street corner at that time of the day is where we're seeing the highest, or as you saw in the presentation today, we could see it is violence against pregnant women in the second trimester. So what does that tell us? And then we've got to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what are our interventions? So really it is about giving that evidence and then saying, now we need to adapt a response to that evidence. That's what this is all about.
You explained how the Department of Health is the key role player in this. How will that data that is collected from the trauma centres, I think it's 34 at this stage, how will that data collate to making changes?
So remember, that's the Hectus data. We actually used it during COVID-19 to measure trauma in our hospitals and use it as a trigger on making sure we are saving beds in our trauma units. So that is one set of data. Another set of data is our ambulance data, so that we know that someone is collected on that street corner, it was a gunshot wound, and then we can start to pick up that there's a regular occurrence in that street. We know that we must then deploy to that street. So remember, it's a whole lot of layers of data, and we will be adding more and more data as we continue to build out the system. And this system is then used by all departments, SAPs, anybody involved in the safety of our region is able to draw down on this data. And what we will also design is something that actually the public can see, just like we did with COVID-19. There was a public dashboard. Of course, below that, we also had interventions from the different departments. It's going to be running in the same way.
So if I understand correctly, you don't want to be reactive but proactive.
Correct. We've got to try and get ahead of the game. We've got to know that on a Sunday night in this specific area, that's actually where crime happens, so that we can actually make sure we've got programs in place to deal with it. But that's the short-term reaction stuff. The other is how we actually start to find out about boys at that age. So how do we identify them so that they actually become, instead of the gangsters of the future, we can intervene, we can deal with the issues, we can identify those specific boys, and we can put them through programs that they become the risk-taking entrepreneurs of the future, not the gangsters.
We've heard over and over again that the South African Police Service, the understaffing is immense. How does the province play its role?
So, of course, part of the safety plan has been adding extra boots. We will continue to fight for more resources. We always hear the story about resources, but quite frankly, just go to our police stations and you will see they are under-resourced. Specifically, go to where these shootings are happening. We just need to make sure we get more resources where the crime happens. So we are deploying, but of course we have just over 1,000 officers now that we've deployed through this program, but we've got 20,000 police officers in our province. We should have 25,000 police officers in our province, and we must be able to deploy them also using evidence at the right time when we need to have them there. That is not happening. We need to make sure that we push further for that resourcing from the South African Police Services. We also need to, I believe, still push for devolution of management. National should intervene when provinces fail, but we should actually be able to decide that. We should use this kind of data to manage policing in the province.
You've always were on the side of data and evidence-led. At its peak, what do you hope this dashboard and this data collection will mean for the province?
Well, of course, this is part of that safety journey, because as we start to make it safer, what will happen is our learners will be able to go to school safely, walk to school and walk home, actually spend time at school at the desk instead of under the desk, which in some of our areas is happening right now. We've all seen the photographs of the last 2 weeks and exactly what's been happening. That we change that, because then, safety is a primary prerequisite for any civilization, for any ability to attract investment, to be able to get a job, to be able to live your life. We need to make sure it's safe, and then we need to focus that we bring the jobs in right behind it as well.
Thank you very much. The Premier of the Western Cape, Alan Winde, talking very passionately there about this latest dashboard that the Western Cape province is unveiling today, collecting data as one of the means of a collection stream from hospitals. We also heard earlier the MEC for Health, Dr. Noma French-Mbombo, saying that they see the stab wounds, they see the assaults, and not all people that go to hospitals seeking help necessarily go to the police to make a case. And that's where information like this, as the Western Cape government explained, comes in to assist, to make better plans and look to the future, to intervene before violence escalates and those statistics skyrocket, where we see tens of thousands of people being subjected to abuse on a daily basis, and the murder rate also skyrocketing. And one of the aims that will form part of this project is to halve the murder rate in the Western Cape by 50%. And this is just one of those means that the Western Cape will employ to try and attain that goal.